Numbers and calls now, which I bag it up. Light up my scarf with a sweet one bliss. Someone flicks me a bag it up. So, it's another one. It's another one, yeah. It's a full strong, yeah. Oh, it's another one. It's another one, yeah.
This is Sherry Abassi for iBoxingHub, joined tonight by Savage Dan. Dan, I know you just said you literally just got in a second ago, so thank you for jumping on. Appreciate it. And how is Fight Week treating you?
It's okay. Today we have a Chase Your Future kind of thing that we always do, grassroots boxing, bringing it to the community. Day off tomorrow, media-wise, and then we kick things off on Thursday with a public workout and a showdown, then on to the weigh-in. It's a shorter fight week because it's, a breakthrough rather than, big household names. So it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and hopefully a very good night of boxing.
Excellent. So like you just mentioned about it being a breakthrough show, we haven't got the usual press conference set up and stuff like that. We're just going straight into the media workouts and then the weigh-ins on Friday and then obviously fighting on Saturday at your call.
Yeah, I mean, we have a live showdown, which is obviously less traditional. No sit-down tables. You kind of, have a bit of a face-off and not necessarily a war of words, but you ask people their questions in front of the other person. They have a bit of a interaction and we'll see what we get. There's a couple of facts on there that there could be a little bit of animosity. But generally it's a card where, it's about fighters showcasing their talents. Certain fighters are stepping up. First titles for certain fighters, etc., etc. So altogether, it's an important night of boxing for a lot of our roster.
Absolutely. Obviously, this weekend we've got Caroline Dubois in a good fight. She's been sort of knocking the door now and hopefully pushing on for world honors. And you'd like to think the next 12 months we'd try and get her a decent world title fight. But she's also been calling out Michaela Mayer quite a bit as well. What do you sort of make of that in terms of ambition-wise? That is obviously what you want. You want her to be calling out the top names in the division and pushing for those. But do you think it's too soon for her? Or do you think that boxers are ready to let her off the leash a bit?
Nah, I think that this is the problem you have, especially in women's boxing, where there aren't quite as many boxers as there are in the men's field. You can't keep the training wheels on for too long. We know how good Caroline is, and unfortunately, so does everyone. It doesn't take much to see that she's levels above everybody that she's shared a ring with so far. We know she can step up. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because then if we don't step her up in the next 3 or 4 fights, everyone's going to be like, oh, she's fighting people who she should be fighting and beating. Sorry. So I guess it's time for this. I mean, this is an appropriate step up. This is a tough opponent she has on Saturday. I have no doubt she'll come through it. I really do think she is elite, world level. I've said it from her debut. Technically, she is superb. She's spiteful with her punches. She wants to hurt you. She's one of the few boxers in women's boxing who can score knockouts and stoppages. Everything is there that she needs in order to be a world champion. It's just about, the right kind of direction and right timing on it. I think it is the right time. She has no doubts, and neither does Shane McGuigan, that she beats Michaela Mayer tomorrow.
Wow. Well, I mean, she's actually a pretty good talker. For example, Daniel is more reserved and stuff. So the fact that they're siblings, naturally, you'd get a bit of a comparison. But she's actually a pretty good talker when she wants to. And she's got that personality. She can show it. I've seen a few interviews with her where she's come out of shell a bit more now. So even that side of it, that experience is sort of kicking in for her. And like you said, technically, she's very, very good. She's young. She's hungry. She's only getting better with Shane McGuigan as well at the moment. And obviously, people like Katie Taylor, she's got the titles at the moment. So as the titles start to free up, there's going to be opportunities for her to really kick on and sort of push on and build a legacy, right?
Yeah, and there is no rush with her. She's so young. And relatively a novice as a pro, absolutely no rush. But she wants to rush. There are some fighters that don't need to, but they still want to. Adam Azim's another one. We're young, yes, but doesn't mean we've got time to waste. We want to kick on and we want to progress every time. There's no point sticking around at a certain level for a couple of years just because I have those couple of years. I can be at the top for those years. So I like the fact that she is growing in confidence. Obviously, I've seen her from her debut when we signed her. Super shy. You can still see that she's shy, but she speaks so well now. And you can tell there's a confidence within herself, you know, to call out somebody like a Michaela is, you know, it's not a small thing in itself, you know what I mean? So she's obviously as confident in herself as everyone else is in her.
Yeah, and to sort of touch on the point you just made about these like people like Adam Azim, Caroline Dubois, they're all young and they want to get sort of fast tracked and get those big fights in young. That's something to obviously admire, especially in today's boxing. And in recent years, we've seen where fighters are trying to protect their own and that whole narrative of if you've lost, then it's game over kind of thing. But if these people, like just today, we saw Devin Haney, he's moving up to fight Regis Prograis for a world title. He's 24, he's already been undisputed, and now he's moving on. This is sort of a new generation, a new breed of fighters who want to build a legacy young and sort of stay at the top for as long as possible.
That's it. You know, it's the same as in football. You know, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And it is that simple. You don't need to protect fighters unless they want protecting. You know, some fighters do need 25 fights before you fling them in at fringe world level because there might be confidence issues there or wherever it is that they're still learning on the job. Others feel like, nope, I'm levels above where I'm fighting at and I'm ready to launch pad it now. You know, Amir Khan was such a young fighter when he came through. He's been at the top now, fighting at the top for 20 odd years. You know, it doesn't mean just because you get there, even if you don't, you know, succeed at first, doesn't mean you have to come back down to a far lower level.
Yeah,
you can stick around at the top for as long as you want. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to achieve world titles and to want big fights at 20 years old. You know, as long as you're good enough.
Absolutely, and I think like you just said, we've got Vidal Riley on the card. He's someone who has come from a slightly different world in the sense that he's been training KSI and done things that he's managed to build his profile prior to sort of really making a push at his pro career. But he's openly saying, I'm serious about this. I could very easily go into that world and make crazy money fighting guys and essentially bullying guys who don't have any experience and sort of doing what arguably Tommy Fury is doing with KSI and these type of guys. But he's trying to build himself the proper way and actually accomplish something genuine in professional boxing. So for him to having come off those two TKO victories of Anis Taj and now move on to fight the undefeated fight in Qualis, him himself is showing that he's got that ambition and he's willing to pay his dues in the sport of boxing. What do you think the ceiling is for someone like Vidal Riley? Because he's very good with his talk. Do you believe
he's really good? I think he's a dark horse in the division. I think he's far better than anybody realizes or cares to realize right now, because you're looking at, you know, the world champions and everyone who's competing for world titles at the moment. And because of it, Vidal's slightly going under the radar, but I think it's a good thing. You know, he's really, he might be, out of all the cruiserweights, maybe the most naturally gifted. He moves really smoothly. He can obviously punch. He's got an engine on him. What's there not to like? You know, he can talk really well. And I think the fact that he signed with Boxer and decided to take his pro career as seriously as he has, rather than perhaps go the easier route of YouTube boxing, etc., and you get, you know, some big profile fights, you get some good money, you don't actually really have to even turn up.
Yeah.
I think it shows how good he is. But look, he boxed for West Ham as an amateur. He won pretty much everything there is to win. Didn't go to the Olympics, but as in, you know, a multiple time national champion, etc., he's a boxer before he's a YouTuber. And I think we're going to see that more and more as time goes on. Obviously, there's a nice little appeal there and a crossover from the YouTube world. So every time he fights, you know, you're going to get the YouTube world tuning in as well. But I think we're looking at a world champion there. I really do. I think people might not notice it until it's time to notice it. But I've seen just certain things where I just think he's far better than people appreciate.
Yeah, and like you said, he's sort of under the radar at the moment and taking it sort of a step at a time. But like you said, he signed with Boxer, CBS, Riakpo, Akoli, and we've got a lot of cruiserweights there where there's so many different fights we can make for him. And we can really test him. But obviously, those will come in time. Right now, like you said, he's paying his dues and just developing at the moment. But like you said, he's definitely someone who I think the boxing world will say is a dark horse, and he's got all the ability there to really build and go for it. And he's level-headed. He's not someone who's sort of looking at things and saying, "Oh, throw me in with this guy, throw me in with that guy." Naturally, fighters do have that confidence where they'll back themselves, but he's not an idiot, and he's shown that.
Yeah,
he's got the
and
maturity.
he's in a similar position to. I mean, he's not as young as Caroline or Adam, but he can take his time. The cruiserweight division is notoriously old, to be fair. You know, everyone is 30 plus and well into their 30s. He's, I think, just 25, 26 coming up to something like that. He can take his time. He can kind of go at his pace. And, you know, a lot of the people that are world champions are people that he's looking up to and, you know, are his peers right now, but just at a different stage. At some point, he gets in the ring with them. And he probably gets in the ring with them all, you know, and for him, it must be nice to know that you're chasing the pack and that you've got time to catch up with the pack, you know. It wouldn't, I mean, it's an English title on the line. That would be his first title. And then, you know, you very quickly start looking at the British. As soon as you've got the English, you start having a look at where that British is. Obviously, Isaac and Mikel are fighting for that. He won't be miles off fighting one of them boys. And that's the thing. It's just about making sure he develops nicely, progresses. He's obviously with 258 now, and they're going to push him more and more. It's about getting the right fights at the right time. And I'm interested and I'm excited to see what his future becomes. I really rate him. I like him.
And like you said, I think the fact that he's with a promotional outfit, we've got quite a few British cruiserweights signed up as well, who have got world titles or are at the cusp of a world title, and he's still developing. It's not necessarily something that he's sort of made happen, but those guys are going to end up fighting each other, and there's going to be wear and tear because none of those fights are going to be easy. So he can kind of come in as a fresh guy with his development and go in against guys who've had tough fights and naturally are going to have more wear and tear on their bodies and have those tough nights already. So he's going to have those sort of advantages potentially against these type of guys.
Definitely, you know, and just the mentality switch, you know, some people, as you get to the end of your career, you naturally start to turn it down a little bit. And I guess for Vidal, he's going to really start dialing it up in terms of where he is mentally and what he wants to achieve. A lot of the fighters that you're naming have either achieved what they want to achieve, or, you know, they're currently in that phase where they are achieving everything. They know, you know, that boxing isn't a sport that lasts forever, you know, and you do age out pretty quickly, you know, and your decline can be pretty quick, you know. If he can time it right, then he can, and he'll already know where he's at because he would have sparred a lot of the boys. And I know sparring, but you do get an indication of where you actually are in terms of skill set, speed, power. You can take a lot from it. So for him, it's a bright future. I guess it's the same as the rest. You don't want to push them too hard. You want them to go at their pace, the correct pace. And there is no correct pace. You know, the correct pace is kind of the pace that you can go at, that you want to go at, that your team's comfortable with. And that's it. You know, boxing is one of those sports where you can plan it all you want, but there's always curveballs all over the place. You kind of have to ride the waves.
Absolutely. And that whole thing of timing is everything. That kind of brings me on to the next part of my sort of questions for you in terms of British boxing and the state we're in at the moment, in terms of we've got a lot of young stars and maybe some guys who are sort of at the peak of their powers. And then some of the guys who actually brought it to the level it's at now, the boom we had through people like AJ. And at the time you had Kell Brook, you had Amir Khan, who was still about, you had Tony Bellew, Hay made a comeback. All these guys were there and about. They've obviously now left the sport, and we're probably past the point of that peak. Now we're on the way down, without saying we're hit rock bottom, but we're on the way down from that boom. Obviously with Matchroom sort of branching off into a global view, Boxer have now come in at Sky Sports, and you've got fighters sort of fractured between these three different entities. You got Queensbury, who've got a set of British boxers, yourself obviously building sort of more from developmental level and building to world championship, and some fighters jumping around and whatnot. We've seen that, you know, that boom period has sort of come and gone. For you now, how do you see British boxing and the state of British boxing? Is it too small for this many big promoters, or are there enough fighters who can be built to get it back to that level again?
I don't think we've ever had this many big promoters, this many different broadcasters in the game at the same time. It helps the boxers in terms of, you know, being able to have deals. negotiate deals, play people off against each other as you do. I think for the health of the sport, it's probably not great having so many different ways that you have to watch boxing. So many fights that can or cannot be made because of the politics involved and stuff like that. It's not great for the health. But where there is a fighter that demands attention, they will get attention. There are some fighters that it doesn't matter where they are. You can see pretty much nail on from now, people will go and watch them, whether it's to watch them. Someone like a Ben Whitaker, it doesn't really matter where he is. People are going to watch him. Obviously, if you've got Sky, it's the easiest platform, it's the biggest platform, etc., etc. It's far easier to even know he exists. There's a much bigger shop window. But he is that kind of character where people are going to either love him or hate him. And because of it, they're going to watch him. And I just think that as long as we have enough of those characters, enough needle, grudge matches, would would George Groves be George Groves if it wasn't for his back and forth with Carl Froch? Everyone knows George Groves, knows George is great, but that's what catapulted him. And sometimes you need a dance partner, and you never really know where one's going to come from. Jack Catterall got one with Josh Taylor. No one was really that interested in the animosity between them until it got into fight week and it became what it became. And then the rematch now is a big talking topic. So boxing, just when you think it's going to maybe be on a decline, it will give you something that lets you know that it's not.
So hopefully we've got another boom period, or we're going to stay at this sort of level and stay with the interest from the fans and whatnot, because we've got a lot, like you said, a lot of talented fighters across all different promoters in this country anyway. And with Ben Shalom, for example, someone who's come in as the younger promoter out of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren and whatnot, he's openly said on a number of occasions he's happy to work with all promoters to make the fights happen, and he showed that intent this time last year when Joe Joyce and Parker got it on, because Parker had signed to Boxer at that point, I believe. So he showed that he's a man of his word, and he allowed that to happen and worked with Frank and Queensbury to make it happen. Today on Sky Sports, we had Anthony Yard, 2:30 p.m. He's now being interviewed on another broadcaster that he's not signed to, but he's there saying, I want the winner of Buatsi and Aziz. Is that what we need to keep the sport at the forefront of the casual fan and just out in general to make sure these guys are calling each other out and making these fights happen that way?
Yeah, I mean, it's not often that you're going to get somebody who fights from across the road be able to go on a different platform and call that fight out. It's obviously because it's a fight that's possible. And it's a fight that everyone's wanted for a long time now. We're talking half a decade. People have been asking for Buatsi versus Yard, but I think it's good. I think it's healthy. I think obviously as a business, everyone has to protect their assets, but there comes a time where you have to kind of just protect the sport, and the fans want to see a big fight, and if it's possible, you have to do everything in your power to do it. There's nobody wins if these fights don't happen. So it was good to see Anthony Yard on there talking. Obviously, he seems to be wanting the Buatsi fight more than he wants the Aziz fight. And we'll see how things go October 21st. But I think it's good. I think wherever possible, I understand there's contracts involved, etc., etc. I think you have to find a way to make these big fights happen
and to satisfy all parties. Like you said, there's so many different bits in contracts. That we don't
Sometimes
know about.
You can't even satisfy all parties. But I think we have a duty to satisfy the fans, to satisfy the fighters. It's fine if a fighter says I don't want to fight him, then that's fine. That's it. It's done. But if fighters want to fight each other and the fans want them to fight them, then everybody, broadcasters, promoters, everybody should be working together to make those fights happen. So
from your end, in your opinion, do you think it's a likely possibility we can get that fight made, whether it's on TNT or Sky? We can get the winner of
it could be on both. Sky and BT, TNT have always worked together. I think it was even the Fury White fight. I think you could watch it on both.
Yeah.
BT and Sky. So like, there's never been an issue there. We've worked with them numerous times. I can't remember what other fight there was. We've worked with Queensbury a couple of times on a couple of fights. We're still yet to get a win against them, to be fair. When we go on their shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, if you want to make these fights happen, it's in the interest of everyone to work together. And you know, you have to try. You know, there's been so many fights that we've missed throughout the years because of the Cold Wars.
Like you said, so that comes down to sort of politics and everyone's personal sort of protecting your assets and agendas and whatnot, and broadcasting stuff that's in the background. For the average fan, obviously, we just want to see the fights. That's what it comes down to. That sort of ties into the next question. I don't know if you've seen today on Twitter and on Instagram, a few different pages are reporting that Showtime is looking to leave their regular boxing sort of broadcasting of the sport. They're willing to do sporadic pay-per-views. Apparently, it's not confirmed by them directly yet, but there's been a lot of rumors and murmurs over the last week that they will be potentially leaving the sport at the end of this year and only really doing the odd pay-per-view here and there. Maybe like Canelo's got 2 fights left with them, that and maybe Gervonta Davis, the fights that they know are going to make them the big buck kind of thing. What's your opinion on that? And do you think that's sort of a that's what the outcome is when fighters aren't willing to risk their own and take the fights when they're there?
Maybe, I don't know. Again, in America, there's a lot of players as well. It's just like here, I guess. You know, there's obviously you got PBC, you got Golden, but you got everybody jostling for position, and eventually a broadcaster. I mean, obviously, I don't know if the rumors are true, but eventually a broadcaster decides it's not worth the money or whatever it is in order to keep the, you know, that department open or whatever it is. It makes sense that Showtime go and do they're going to stick around and do pay-per-views and big fight stuff, but they will be fighting everybody else for those. That's the issue you have. I never like it when somebody drops out of boxing, but sometimes it's because somebody new's come in. I remember Showtime came in and HBO were gone, and HBO was like, for me, like I absolutely loved watching that broadcast, and I just loved everything that HBO brought to boxing. So now that they were gone, you know, Showtime kind of took the wheel from them, and now we have to see what happens with Showtime. But this is the consequence, you know. Everybody every now and then, especially with boxing, you know, you get a new broadcaster, a new team, a new something coming in to give it a shot. America's had so many of them, I'll be honest, that have come in. Some have lasted a year, some have lasted less, some have lasted two events. It's a tough sport to navigate, and obviously the numbers don't always end up exactly how people would have hoped. So interesting one to see. I'll keep an eye on it. I haven't heard anything from Showtime or Steve and Espinoza or anyone. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, so far it's only been rumors and murmurs, but there's one guy in particular who's actually got quite a lot of links with them, and he's sort of put it out there that they're going to leave. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. But like we were saying, they're potentially only going to do pay-per-view fights and big fights.
Yeah.
The UFC and the WWE recently had a merger to form TKO Holdings. That's obviously a massive sort of thing for them, where they're going to have so much sort of shared interest in massive events across the whole world, basically Australia, USA, potentially UK. Naturally, would that, in your opinion, do you think that affects boxing? Can that give a kick up the backside for promoters to start getting their act together and work together more, make the fights to challenge that? Because that could drown out boxing in a lot of ways.
It could. I mean, every time there's something new that pops up, they always say this is going to be the death of boxing. It never really is.
Yeah.
Boxing just has to adapt, and it always does. You know, for me, I am an armchair UFC MMA kind of fan. I'll tune in for the big fights, but
same.
You know, I'm not really that interested. With boxing, I'm all in. And you know, some people are the other way around. I think it's just about making sure you're still attractive. As long as you're still attractive, no matter what it is, doesn't matter whether it's in a cage or a ring or a triangle. I've seen all kinds of shapes nowadays. As long as what you're putting out is attractive, I think everyone survives.
So I think it was Larry Merchant who said nothing can kill boxing and nothing can save it. So it's always going to be around. And we've got, like you said, so many young superstars, so many current top stars that I think would be all right either way. But it's a shame to see a big platform like that potentially leaving the sport. But that is what it is. And just to sort of finish out with you, Dan, sort of reverting back to Showtime again, this weekend, the biggest fight of the weekend is Canelo. Yeah. Anytime Canelo fights, it's always Canelo, the Canelo show.
There's a big one at York Hall as well.
Absolutely, of course, absolutely. That's what the whole interview was about. But I just wanted to finish on Canelo. Of course, like for him to be fighting a guy coming up from 154, jumping up 2 weight divisions, it wasn't the Charlo that everyone expected. And when the poster got announced, everyone was a bit like taken back. Undisputed versus undisputed, which is, a brilliant sort of history making tagline, and it is factually true. But what do you make of that fight? What do you make of each guy's chances in the fight, and how do you see it playing out?
I think it's a clever fight for Canelo to want. I think he's the money fight anyway. So Charlo, it doesn't matter which Charlo you offer it to, they're going to snap your hand off anyway. They both want that fight. Everyone wants the Canelo fight. I want to fight Canelo. He is the money in boxing. I like Charlo. I don't give him much of a chance though. He's got good power.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's particularly cute in what he does. I think he'll be quite straight up and down. I don't even think it will be that tricky for Canelo, who likes to have a few rounds off early just to have a look. I'm not even sure he has that look this time. I think if Charlo is able to come out and get his respect and land something early, then we have a fight. But I can't really see anything other than a pretty convincing Canelo victory.
Interesting, because that super middleweight, I think he's had 7 fights now, and he's sort of been that way where he's just taking a look, taking his time, and eventually he's caught up to him. And he's been on a great run. So I think apart from John Ryder, he's pretty much, and Golovkin, he's pretty much stopped everyone on the way to the undisputed title. So for him, like you said, and he said he's had injuries in the last few fights, so this could be the one where he's at full strength, and we're going to see him back at sort of his top level. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll be a great fight. And like you said, the big fight night is
great fight. There'll be a bit of back and forth, I think, but I don't think there'll be that much forth. I think he'll be too big, too strong. He's been campaigning up at 175 and like whatever it is, and Charlo coming up 2 weight divisions, not to fight just anybody. You're fighting somebody who's very athletic. Yes, he may have slowed his legs down, and he wants to kind of plod around and find you that way, but his hands are still super fast. He's still got a lot of skills. He can pop hard. And I just don't think Charlo is going to be the type to get on his bike like that and stay away. So yeah, for me, it will be, I think he stops him. I think it'll be a late stoppage.
Yeah, that seems to be the general consensus online. And obviously, thank you for your time, Dan. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to touch base with you after this weekend's card in a week or two and sort of dissect that and go through what's next for each of the fighters. Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, mate.
Thank you for your time, Dan. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice one.